let us discuss about the Mendel and the gene idea. This is the basics of genetics. So we need to learn basics of genetics to understand how a trait or a character is influenced by the environment, and how a character actually flows from one generation to another generation. This is actually part of our day-to-day life, because as we all know that we are noticing for many years that children are look like their parents, and if they are very much similar, their eyes are very similar to their father or mother, their hair color is very similar to them, and all these things, people have noticed these things for many years, but they never came across the idea of how this gene, how this inheritance transfer from one generation to another generation. You have probably heard it many times from many peoples that the child is very fair. That means his father and mother, someone has to be very fair. And you see surprisingly that his father and mother, none of them are really fair, but the child is really fair. How could this possible? Then the probable answer you can find is somewhere in his family tree, or his grandfather or his grandfather's father or grandfather's grandfather may have the trait, the trait for a white skin, and that's why the child after 3 or 4 generations have that trait. How can this trait are converted? How can this trait are actually transferred from one generation to another generation, one point to another point? And sometimes this transfer cannot leave any mark in between generations. So suppose some inheritance is seen. Let me change pick a color. So let's discuss that. So in this point, suppose we have the white skin, and this is the first generation, and the second generation we don't find any white skin. In the third generation we're not finding any white skin. In the fourth generation we're finding this white skin. So this one trait is coming back after 2 or 3 generations. How could this be possible? So no one, every one of us actually can guess these things, but no one of us can go really near to them. And this man, Mendel, Gregor Mendel, is the only one and the first person to get really close to demonstrate how can this possible. So let's escape that. How can Gregor Mendel make this happen? Because Gregor Mendel approaches to these problems with different experiments. So the first thing about the science when you're talking about is making hypotheses and doing experiments, and making those hypotheses wrong or right after the result of those experiments, and then you can say something about that. Okay, so that's what Gregor Mendel did, and many years ago what he did, he actually try to make sure how this trait come from one place to another place. Actually, he is not a scientist. Actually, he was a monk, and he have a plenty of time to work with these pea trees. So pea trees in the field, and he had lots of time to breed those pea trees, and he loved to do that. So he wants to do those breeding between them, and what he did, he actually write down his findings about after every single generation of pea trees. And why he choose this pea trees? Because pea trees are having a really short life cycle, and they can be grown very fast after a very simple time or very small span of time. That's why he can acquire or achieve the result of different generation. Because when you are talking about genetics, we are talking about generation. So big G means generation, and big G means genetics, and big G means gene. So whatever I am talking about is a generation, genetics and gene. They are really super linked. So remember these things in your mind, print these things in your mind. Okay, so what Gregor Mendel did, he actually he took different flowers like this. So he took a purple flower, a flower which petals are purple, another flower petals are white. So this purple flower with white flower, he cross. What do we mean by a cross or hybrid production? A cross means something interference between the reproduction of plants, and this interference in this case is Gregor Mendel. So what do we mean by this cross? Actually, normally what happens, many plants like this peas, they are they are having their male section and they are having their female sections both. So what they did, this normally they just this female section, from this male section stamens are coming out and it sit on the female section, and then the reproduction process is going on normally like that, because flowers, in this case of this kind of flowers which stays in a particular place, because because plants are non-motile. So in case of many plants we can see these things. In case of many, for example China rose and all these different plants, the flowers must have both types of reproductive organs like male and female in one flower. Okay, so that's what peas have. So now what Mendel did, Mendel actually to cut those male parts from one flower, and he cut the female parts of one flower. And what he did, he took, so in this case, in this experiment what we are looking at, so in this flower, or the purple color flower, so when you are talking about purple color flower, you're talking about the color of the petals of the flower. Okay, so I'm not going to tell the purple petal color flower, so I'm telling out the purple color flower. This purple color flower, Mendel cut away all the male parts, and it leaves only the female section. Okay, and what he did, he took the stamens from the white color flower through help of a brush, and he put these stamens onto the carpel of female. Okay, onto the carpel. And that what that results, it results in the reproduction. It results in the gametogenesis. It is not gametogenesis, it results in the fertilization. Okay, so what do you mean by fertilization? In many cases we have male and female, so has to have these two things to make a thing, make another generation. So we have male. In case of males, it usually gives sperms. So let me draw a characteristic shape of the sperm. This is a very bad looking sperm, but it's a sperm. In female it gives egg, and if you combine together, what we have, a cell, a 2n cell. This 2n cell is called a zygote. So this zygote formation is called the fertilization. Okay, so the big F, or means the fertilization. So in this case, the plants are fertilized via a different process than animals. This fertilization is called the double fertilization. So this double fertilization, which has occurred when he put these stamens on the carpel, and after this fertilization, products are formed, and food is formed, and under those food they have the seeds, and the seeds, from the seeds another offspring or second generation comes in. So it's the first generation, and this one is the second generation. Okay, now let's talk about some few naming in this process. Mendel called it the parental generation. The first generation, when he made a cross, he called it the parental generation, or P. And in the second generation, or the first observing generation, we can say, is called the first generation of offspring. So offspring first generation is a parental. So offspring first generation is termed as F1. And if we cross between them again, and then the second generation comes in, we call him the F2, or second offspring generation. Okay, so that was the naming is goes. And another thing Mendel always look for its mind is that all these flowers, all the characteristics he took about these flowers must have a true character. What do you mean by true character? We'll discuss after some time. Okay. So let's look at some genetic vocabulary before going to the another slides, or before going to the experiment and the result of Mendel's experiment. So suppose one thing is a character, and what is a trait? So character, as we know, character is a heritable feature. Simple as that. It's a heritable feature. So it's a feature of an organism that can be herited. So suppose it's the flower color. So it's a color of the flower. It's a color of the flower. It can be herited. So it can be herited. So if it's herited, it is called the character. Okay. So the generation 1, and we have a generation 2. So it can be herited, this color can be herited, or the factor of this color can be herited, and nowadays we know what are those factors are. But if the color can be herited, that means the color is a character. And what is a trait? Trait is a variant of a character, or the versions of a character, I can say. Okay, so what is a version of a character mean? So I have a character color, and what is the variations of the color? It can be a purple, it can be a white, according to our previous example. It can be a purple or it can be a white. So what is the character is a color, what is the trait, purple or white. So same as that, what is the character is the pod color of P, and what is the variant is it will be green, it will be a yellow. Okay. And another character for this P which Mendel took is the shape of the seed of the P, and what are the traits. Traits will be a wrinkle and round. Okay, so these are the examples of characters and traits. Now let's look at the result of Mendel's experiment. What Mendel observed is quite astonishing. It is quite surprising, I can say. In the first generation of the P, that means the parental generation, what he found, he crossed between a purple color and a white color flower. He expect what he probably expect. He according to the previous understandings about the genetics, you can say that he must have seen that some flowers will have this purple color and some have the white color, but nothing is like that is happening. In the first generation, he can find all those flowers are purple in color. So when he crossed between the purple and white flower, he found all those flowers in the first generation, first offspring generation of the F1 generation of all those hybrids are purple in color. So where does the white color gone? Is this white color actually completely gone or not? So what's happening to this trait? Okay, so you have one character. The character is the flower color, and what is the trait? Trait is a purple and white. So what does this trait gone? Answer is is that trait gone? Now to find out that, Mendel did another round of experiment. He did another round of hybridization between those offspring which are found in the first generation. So he took these plants and he interbreed between them. So they breed between these two purple color plants which are found in the very first offspring or F1 generation. And what he found, another important discovery. And what is the discovery is in the second offspring or F2 generation, he found a ratio. He found a ratio about 3:1. So what does this ratio suggest? Maybe there is an experimental error. So he repeat this process again and again and again, and all the time he end up with this kind of ratio 3:1. So this 3:1 ratio in this case, 3% 3 times or the 75% of the time all those flowers are purple in color. So purple trait is dominant, or it is dominating the character actually, and this white trait is not actually dominating in this case, because white character he found only very few. Okay, so it's always 25% and always it's 75%, or roughly about that, what that suggests. And he not only using the color of the flower as a character, but he used 7 different characters to study for making an hypothesis and looking at how this inheritance is come to be existed. And what the characters he uses is a flower color, flower position. So it is an axial position or terminal position, or the seed color, which is a yellow and green, which is a seed shape, round or wrinkle, which is a pod shape, which is inflated and constricted. What is the pod color? Green on yellow. What is this stem length? So he did plenty of different experiments. So in this every cases he took a character and he looked for different traits. So what all the time he found is in case of every single character he found 2 traits. So trait 1 and trait 2, and in all those processes that he have done, he found these traits. One of those traits are dominating, and let me delete it. Let me erase this. So all the time what he found is really astonishing. One of the trait is dominating and one of the trait is non-dominating. Okay, and he called these things in different names, or using different names. So in every single cases, one of the trait is dominating, so one of the trait has a 3%, another trait 75% chance of having this trait, and only 25% chance of having another trait which is not dominating. So what does this result suggest him? Is in this way. So he developed an hypothesis. So what is the hypothesis? To explain the result he have found is 3:1. He make an hypothesis about this. Actually 4 related concepts he made, and those 4 concepts, believe it or not, from many years now, when you know the genes and all these things. Mendel have no idea about what the gene is and all these things about the chromosomes and nothing about that. But in that time Mendel states some 4 related concepts, and those are actually the driving force of our modern day genetics, or the modern day genetics when we are explaining with genes. Because what he said is the first thing, or first hypothesis you can say, is in every single character there is an alternative version. So there has to have at least two alternative version of every single character, and that is true, and we know that is true because from this experiments what Mendel have done, he was so confident that because he did a lots of experiment actually, so 7 characters and many generations of experiment, he know that has to be a truth, because his approach was really scientific in that case. So one character, for every single character it has to have 2 different traits, and among those 2 different traits, so they have 2 different traits, and where those traits can be found, as we know now that we have chromosome, and we have a chromosome we call the homologous chromosome. What do you mean by this homologous chromosomes? In this each homologous chromosomes, one comes from our father and another comes from our mother. Okay, so for example, it comes from our father, it comes from our mother. So this is an homologous chromosome, and in this homologous chromosome we can find one of the traits for a particular character, and he called them alleles. Okay, so what do you mean by alleles? Alleles are the variations of a gene. So now we know in the case of every single expression what we have is controlled by or due to the presence of genes. Okay, due to the presence of genes. And now we have a gene for every single characters that are shown outside of our body. Okay, for example, our hair color, our eye color, color of our eyeball, and all these things, our skin color, our height, and all these things is expressed by genes, one or many genes. Okay, but Mendel stated about only one gene, because Mendel is not aware of those complexity or complexity form of life, so he talks about he told about the one gene. Okay, so this one gene expresses our different what you can say, the expressions of us, or different characters, like Mendel studied in case of peas. Okay, for example, in this case we are talking about the pea color or the flower color. In this flower color we have one character is a color, and the character has 2 traits, one is the purple and the white, and these traits are called alleles. And is these traits are a result of different genes? The Mendel said no, it has to have one single gene, but this gene can be expressed in 2 different ways. It can be expressed in this T1 ways, which will result in purple color. It can be expressed in other way, which will be resulted in white colored flower. So the expression of this gene will be called alleles. So the variations or versions of gene could be an alleles. So print it in your mind. Many times students find these alleles and genes are really complicated to understand, but the thing is, gene is a book. So we have a book which is gene, and we have many versions of it. We have version 7, version 8, version 9, and the highest and the latest version is version 10. So you can have many versions of that gene. Okay, so it's simple as that. So in 8 version you can find the bicolored, in 10 version you can find the whole colored version. So that's the difference between that book. So that's why a gene is a book, and these traits or alleles what we have, alleles are the versions of that gene. Okay, if we talk about character, then we have one character, and if we have the version of the character, we call them the traits. So that's a simplest description about character, traits, and genes and alleles. Okay, now he told another thing, that each character, an organism inherits 2 alleles. Okay, as we know, one has to be many times has to dominated over another one. So he states that 2 alleles, so it comes one from each other. Okay, so a genetic locus is actually represented twice. So what do you mean by genetic locus? For example, let's draw me a chromosome. So we have a chromosome like that. We have another chromosome. So these are the homologous chromosome. For example, we have a gene in this position. So the position where you can find an allele for a gene is called the locus of that chromosome. Okay, So where you can find, or the locus is a position where the finding chance or chance of finding a gene is highest, is called a locus. So we have a locus 1, so it's a locus 1 here, and we have another locus in this. Okay, so genetic locus is actually represented twice, and what we are looking at, this is the homologous chromosomes, and this homologous chromosomes we are actually finding that the locus is represented twice. Okay, why the locus will be represented twice? The Mendel said that it is a possible tendency to have each of these chromosomes of the homologous chromosome, one from our father and one from our mother. So all those homologous chromosomes that builds us, we know them, the 22 autosomal chromosome and another pair, 22 pairs of autosomal chromosome and another pair of sex chromosomes. All these chromosomes inherited from, why you call it 22 pairs of autosomes? Why we are calling it the pairs of autosomes? The pairs means 22 chromosomes are coming from a father, 22 is coming from our mother, and one is coming from our mother, one is coming from father, to make the sex chromosomes, and we will make up to the 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs of chromosomes, you can say. So it is better to say 46 chromosomes in this case. So all we are talking about, when we talk about pairs, we are talking about the pairing between a father and mother chromosome. Okay, so each different genetic position or allele is actually inherited from one of our ancestor, one of our father, and another is from our mother. So in this case, let's look at for one gene. So a gene is present. So in these two homologous chromosomes, we have a same gene. We have a gene that is called, that controls the color of flower color. Okay. So the same gene, but in this locus, which is coming from our father, indicates a purple flower or the presence of this, and from mother it indicates a white flower. Okay, so that is the difference. So we have same gene in a particular same locus, and we have two versions of that gene, so two alleles for one gene. That's what is going on. And the third assumption is that one has to be the dominant one, another has to be is non-dominant. What it means, as we know, when you cross between this purple and white, what we are looking at, we have all purple in the F1 generation, and in second generation it's a P generation. In second generation, what we are finding that we also have this purple and white, but the ratio is 3:1. So we have a ratio of, this is really mistake. What we have a ratio of 3:1. That means a 75% over 25% ratio. Okay. So all the time, not in case of the flower color, but in the case of all those 7 characters that Mendel chose, and all those characters, those characters they have two different traits, and one of those traits are dominant and another trait is recessive. Okay, so he called them the dominant and recessive. So the trait which can be found or which determines the organism appearance most of the time is called the dominant allele, and another allele which has no noticeable effect on organism's appearance most of the time is called the recessive allele. Okay, in this case we have found that this purple color can be found most of the time, so it's a dominant version of the allele, and it's a recessive version of the allele, but both are the versions of the same gene, and that gene determines the color of the flower. Okay, and what is the fourth law? It is called the law of segregation. It's the most important law, you can say, as I have discussed earlier, that we have those two chromosomes. For example, these two chromosomes, these homologous chromosomes, one is coming from our father, another one is coming from our mother, and in this picture that law of segregation actually come to end. How can we have these two? In each generation we have these two, so we cannot have both with us. We cannot have both with us in all the time. So Mendel said us that with his fourth thing is the law of segregation, that the two alleles for a heritable character, for example in this case the flower color is a heritable character, it has the two alleles. One allele determines it is a dominant allele which makes the flower purple, another allele is the recessive allele which makes the flower white, and these are the separate we can say the separate versions of that character.